So, a very good evening to all, to all the architect and engineers who have joined us from across the Northeast. We sincerely thank you for your time and appreciate your contribution towards making Sampark a successful journey so far. So today we have architect Aiban from Shillong. He is the speaker and the presenter for the evening. He will be presenting on green learnings from traditional Khasi architecture. Also in the panelist, we have architect Arijit Chaudhary as a special invitee. Arijit sir will also throw light on his learnings of Khasi architecture. We have Dr. Jayanta Pathak as the moderator, Mr. Rahul Aditya, Sales Manager, Tata Steel, Mr. Shivam Paliwal, Brand Manager, Tata Steel, Mr. Sharad Kumar Jain, Managing Director, SM Corporation Limited. So I welcome all the architect engineers, all the panelists to today's session. And before we start, I would like to talk about Sampark. As you all know, Sampark is a humble initiative taken by us to connect all the top architect engineers of Northeast and share the vast knowledge that is there with senior architects like architect Aiban, architect Arijit Chaudhary, and many others, architects as well as engineers, and share it within this community in the region so that the knowledge which is there can be shared and everyone can grow. So that's the whole objective of creating this Sampark platform. And as we are all at home, we can reach maximum participants through this initiative, so we have taken it digitally. Now, before I proceed ahead, I would like to invite Mr. Shivam Paliwal from Tata Steel, who would be throwing light on digital initiatives, and then we'll take the evening forward. Thank you. Shivamji, over to you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. I think, given the lockdown, seeing new faces, it's a blessing on its own, to be honest. And uh, and I'm very privileged to. First of all, my name is Shivam Paliwal. I'll just give you a small introduction. My name is Shivam Paliwal. Currently handling brand for Tata Tiscon, living in Kolkata. Originally from Uttar Pradesh, home in Rajasthan, and Northeast has been a very special place in my heart because I was very pleased to see architect sir from Shillong, because I also did my MBA from IIM Shillong. So stayed 2 years of my education from Shillong and understand how the culture of the place is. So in general, what I have seen, I'll just share my learnings of what I have seen in terms of different architecture styles. So I feel that culture, along with the weather and the climatic conditions, that defines how the architecture generally is. So if you were to go to Kerala, there are a lot of rainfall, plus people are really humble, and hence the houses are much more subdued. But if you go to Rajasthan, place where there's less rainfall and people have that historical element of nobility in them, and the houses are very big in general. But if you come to Northeast, it has got its own aura when it comes to the Khasi style or other styles of architecture. So it's a very beautiful initiative that Saraj ji and Rishi ji have rolled out along with the help of prominent architects from the region. And I would again, I'm again honored and wishing you all the best for today's webinar. Yeah, thank you.
So Shivamji, thank you so much. Before we move on, I would just like to read out few guidelines that we have made for the webinar. So the first is, please post all your questions in the Q&A box. We will try to answer your question after the webinar or in between as allowed by the moderator, which is in this case, Jayanta Pathak sir. Request all registered participants to enter their name while they are in the meeting, so that when you ask a question, we can refer your name and then answer it. So that is all from my side. Now, Shivamji, you mentioned that we have rolled out this initiative, but here I would just like to clarify that though we are there in the picture, but the 80% of our work is being done by Jayanta sir, and he has been really there to help us out for everything that we need for the session. So actually 80% work is being done by Jayanta sir, and we are just there in the background doing the 20% work. So once again, thank you so much. And Jayanta sir, over to you. So you can take the evening forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi. It was your idea. You spoke about this, connecting to all the professionals in the Northeast. And we found that in the last webinar, we had participants from Mumbai, we had participants from Delhi. So, in fact, a lot of people are getting interested in what you stated. So I appreciate that Tata Steel and SM Corporation has been, doing this, and which is quite beneficial. And today, when we spoke to architect Aiban, he wanted the students to be a part of it because he was so keen to have the youngsters joining this webinar and learning about these traditional values and architecture culture. So we are here today after the first one, which was delivered by one of our most eminent and celebrated architect, Arijit Chaudhary. We are now today with another most celebrated architect from Northeast. I call him Aiban. We are almost contemporary. Before starting this webinar, we had some informal talk and we enjoyed the evening time talking to each other. So just to, everybody knows him. I know Aiban is known to almost all the practicing architect and engineers who are working in the Northeast. But as a formality, I'd be mentioning few information about him. Aiban is a very modest guy, and I have attended his presentation in Shillong. He comes from one of the most beautiful places in the world. He comes from Shillong, and a wonderful person with a beautiful mind. We are so glad that he agreed to deliver this lecture. Aiban graduated from CPT Ahmedabad in 1989, and he started his practice. He developed his practice in Meghalaya, and he's the principal architect of Atelier A+. They have delivered a lot of quality design and quality projects over the last few years. He has a lot of interest in traditional architecture. He has a lot of interest in Khasi architecture, and he has published numerous papers, articles, which are already given in his introduction in the flyer. He is also a member of the Board of Studies in the Department of Architecture in the Northeastern Hill University, NEHU. He is also a president of Meghalaya's Architect Forum. So he is devoting his time to leadership development. He is also General Secretary of the Meghalaya Rural Tourism Forum. And he has a lot of interest in developing rural tourism. And he was the jury member of the 29 JK Awards at Vadodara, Gujarat. He's also a member of the Meghalaya State Heritage Authority. So he has many hats to wear. A very dedicated, socially responsible, professionally active architect of Northeast. It's my immense pleasure to welcome him. With him, I also welcome Mr. Sarat Jain, the Managing Director and Chairman of the SM Corporation. I thank him for giving his time. He's a busy man, but he's always finding time to attend these webinars and enriching each other's, and he has a lot of interest. I know that he has a lot of interest in culture and heritage and architecture. That's why they join these webinars with us. I also welcome Mr. Sivam Paliwal and Mr. Rahul Aditya, the two gentlemen from Tata Steel, without whose active participation this webinar could not have been organized. I welcome again Rishi, the host, who is doing all the hard work behind. When you have to organize a webinar, you have to do a lot of background work. He and his team has been excellent, and this is the second one in the line. I also welcome again architect Arijit Chaudhary. I call him Arijitda, and he was the first speaker. And it was Aiban's special request that Arijit Chaudhary should be there, not as a participant. He should be today as a panelist and should be participating in the discussion. So on our special request, he agreed. He has joined today. Thank you very much. Now with this, I welcome again architect Aiban, and I request architect Arijit Chaudhary to bring architect Aiban to the presentation. Thank you very much. Please, Arijitda.
Been interacting with him. Been interacting with him for on many things, and then we also had this common interest about the traditional architecture and all that, which I am also working on. And so before we start today on his topic, what I would like to say is that say Khasi architecture is not much known outside the Northeast. Even in Northeast also it is not known much. It's very little is known about Northeast, and more little of Khasi architecture. So the Khasi, apart from the people within Khasi, Shillong Plateau and Khasi, many would not know the background of Khasi tribe. So they are descendants of it's a Mongoloid descendant. The first people who came over to this area, they were the first descendants of the Mongoloid clan. And basically Khasi, they comprise of a few sub-tribes. You can call it as people who are living in different locations, as the Kinriams, Nars, Bhois, Wars, and Lingams. So, and it's a material society. It has its own religion, and a lot of his custom is based on the religious beliefs. Many of the Khasis have again got converted, taken up to different religions like Hinduism, Christianity, and then your Islam. Islam you'll find more towards the southern slopes. Hinduism is spread all over here and there, and a majority of them are today Christians. Now, they have a lot of rituals and all. So now what is happening is that people who are of the Khasi descendants and who have taken up different religions are not really permitted to take part in the rituals, but they have the culture which they held is held by all of them. And they believe in one God, and that is one, the Ublay. Aiban will excuse me for the pronunciation of the names, because we are not very used to the name. And under the one God, they have different deities of our mountain and other natural objects. It's basically see the monoliths form a important in their society. They have some erected for the dead souls, where they bury their bones and all that, and others are used as a resting place for the travelers. And they have traditionally they have a lot of just construction rituals. They do not do any construction work without any ritual. First of all, it is to take the blessings of the Mother Nature to construct a particular place, and they have some certain conditions where it says that you cannot construct on the last hill, which is called the Lumda. Lumda is the extreme limit. You should not be constructing on the extreme limit of a hill. And the next is no construction is done onto the right of the mother's house. the mother's house. Mother's house has the should be the extreme right house, and then you can construct within the same compound behind the house or to the left of it. Your then your construction is you are to on the solar side where it is the material there is your stored, and then if you are on the boy that is on the northern slopes, that's where they use a lot of bamboo and on stilts. They are on stilts and they are on thatched roof. And the middle portion, which is the kinjams, that is the main plateau. What we have today is the Shillong Plateau, the place where they use the stone base with a timber platform and a thatch roof. Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thatch roof. Can you hear me? Okay, fine. So these are the things that is there certain things which are adopted in their construction of houses. The NARS, I think ENARs, they have palm leaves and hog thatch on the roof. So, and the house shape has got a peculiar, they have a peculiar shape, which is very, again, based on the belief of the shape of an egg. The roof is in the shape, house in the shape of an egg, which implies that the egg, which takes care of an embryo. Similarly, the egg-shaped house also takes care of the family, which is residing within that house. So that is the protecting the lives of the people who are dwelling within it. So basically, it is like this. They have all this function, and they also have another very interesting thing: is that no houses, the roofs of the houses would be touching each other. They should be separated so that that is one of the rules. So that is basically also gives them the air and light of a house. I think okay. I think that's all. Basically is the best. And then let Aiban continue with the rest of his presentation now. He will be presenting everything based on this. Over to Aiban. Aiban, I welcome you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi. So good evening, everyone, and thanks, Dr. Jayan, for introducing me to this platform, which I hope that it carries forward into, trying to get more architects and engineers. In fact, I was telling someone from Tata that let us all use this platform as a place where architects and engineers meet together and discuss things about our profession in the Northeast. And let's use this platform as a catalyst for things that could change in our profession, because we are so so far away from mainland India that when I interacted with architects from outside, no one really knows the type of work that we do and stuff like that. So I hope Tata Steel carries on with this. Thanks, Dr. Arijit Da, for introducing me. You're quite right about the Khasi architecture. Very less is known about it. In fact, very less is known about it even among us. I had written this entire presentation is based on my design thesis, which I had written way back in 1989, and it's only I think so. It was in the mid-20s, 2014, that someone heard about my thesis and decided to call me for a presentation, incidentally by INTAC, in a college, in Lady King College. So I said that, so I had to go back to my old thesis and try to, assemble together all the stuff which I have to bring it up. I mean, really getting it out from the cupboard, And since then, I've been invited to a lot of talks, which I'm glad. In fact, reason why I mentioned to Dr. Jayant about trying to get a lot of students is because I thought that our generation, our future generation, should at least know about our heritage, you know, the cultural heritage, the cultural built heritage that we have, which we could learn a lot. There are certain things, especially in when we go through this, when we travel together through this presentation, there are a lot of things that we have forgotten, that we don't know. There are a lot of things that we could learn also, you know. In fact, I have done some case studies of certain things that I've learned a lot from what I've been from my research. So let's not waste time. I shall start my presentation if it's okay with everyone. Can I share the screen, please, Rishi?
Yes, sir. Yes, you can.
Yeah. So can everyone see the screen? Is the screen okay? Rishi?
Yes, it's okay.
Perfect, sir.
Aiban. Absolutely fine.
Yes.
Yeah. So here goes. So the topic of my paper is green lessons from traditional Khasi architecture. What I meant by green lessons is what are the things that green building parameters. What are the green building parameters that the Khasi traditional Khasi architecture that we can learn from them? You know, right from construction techniques, from usage of materials, sustainability. So on the screen that you see, there are three images. The one on top is a typical Khasi traditional house in the highlands, and I'll explain to you about the highlands. Arijit had requested me to get a context map. Then the next photograph is a photograph of a Khasi. I call it a Khasi colonial house because it came after when the British had landed up here in the 1800s. I also call it the post-earthquake house because a lot of things have changed after the 1897 earthquake, which everyone knows, calls it the Great Assam earthquake of 1897. With it, I think so. The epicenter was in Jorhat, I think. And the next image is a contemporary house in Shillong, instantly my house, which I'm speaking there from. And so green building, we're just going through the definitions basically, refers to both the structure and the application of processes that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient throughout the building cycle. I mean, these are one of the parameters that Green Building Institute has set up. And it starts right off from planning to design to construction, operations, how the building operates, maintenance of the building. But what we're going to talk here now is basically just about construction, about the green part of construction, the lessons that we can learn from the construction technology, the construction techniques that our ancestors have taught us. These are some of the pictures of typical traditional houses in the Northeast. There's a Naga house on the top right. There's one in Arunachal Pradesh. The one below is a traditional house of the Garos. The bottom right is I had taken this picture when I had gone to Tawang, so got some work there. And the top left again is the one in Orissa. Top right is a typical house in Bengal. I'm talking about Bangladesh now. Then there's another house of the Nagas, and the last one is a very beautiful house. I believe it's a resort somewhere in the outskirts of Imphal. Okay, let's go to context now. For people who have, I mean, people from the Northeast would know better, but for people from outside, so you have the map of Meghalaya with the Brahmaputra on the north, and regarding when it comes to the traditional architecture, there are basically three types of traditional architecture, or three types of typologies in traditional architecture. One is the houses of the Wars, they live in the slopes overlooking Bangladesh. You can see Sylhet there in the south. Then the other are the Bhois. They have another typology and they border Assam. You can see Guwahati there on the north. And then you have the traditional architecture of the highlands, which we call the highlands of the plateau, as what Arijit Da had said. So what my thesis is, what the case study of my thesis is the typical houses that are found in the plateau area. These are the meadow areas. I mean, for people who have traveled, we are talking about Sora, we are talking about Mausanram, Mauklang. Shillong is on the leeward side of the plateau. And so what we are going to talk now are the houses, the traditional houses, which are found in the plateau area, in the highlands area. These are windswept areas. I mean, very hit hard by rains, a lot of wind because of the open ground. So in fact, there are a lot of climatic parameters that these houses had to withstand, And apart from that, we all know very well that this is one of the highest seismic areas in the country. We are right now in zone 5, and we have been hearing we've been hearing earthquakes in the recent days. In fact, in Mizoram, very close by to even Assam epicenters. So this is a very high seismic area. Number one, windswept, a lot of rains, okay, and a lot of fog. So it's a very damp. So the climatic conditions are very extreme in nature. So I have divided, for the sake of this project, I have decided for the sake of this paper, I've divided the so-called traditional Khasi house into 2 types. One is the original Khasi house that is found from where ancestors had given us. And then you have the second type of the bungalow type house, which is the post-earthquake house, or the colonial house, or the house that the missionaries had introduced to us. The one on the left, or the top part, the traditional house, that is a picture that I found in a place called Langkawet village. It's on your way from Shillong to Pinosla and Maudanong and Dauki. If you turn left from the national highway, there's this beautiful village called Langkawet, and it's very strange that I found around 5 or 6 of these houses there. Though the plans have changed, things have changed, but the people still building them, And the ones at the bottom, the bungalow type house, this is the one at Sora. It's very close to the mission house. I call it the mission house, the first place where the Welsh missionaries had come, where they settled. And this is one of the houses of the first converted Khasis way back in the 1800s. Okay? Well-maintained house, and we'll talk about that later. Let's go through these slides. So I've just taken this from my thesis, from my dissertation. My dissertation is quite in fact, what I'm going to talk to you is just one part of my dissertation. The entire dissertation is actually a very deep study. It's called Meaning in Khasi House Forms. I mean, what I meant by meaning is, why is the shape like that? I mean, what decides on the shape of the house? Well, what decides on certain architectural elements? I mean, the reason behind them. In fact, there's a school of thought that says that traditional houses are a direct result of our response to the environment. But not so, because there are other places which are windswept, which are rainy, which are seismic, in the Northeast, but none of the buildings are the same. So there must be a reason why Khasi houses are different, and why the houses in Nagaland or Mizoram, which are equally windswept, equally exposed to the elements. So my thesis was more on that, on the meaning in the Khasi house forms, on the reason why, and I found out that a lot of these architectural elements are not only a response to climate, but also a response to the belief, the value system, the social systems that influences the house form. And this is it's no longer a hypothesis, but people have done studies on this. In fact, there's there are a lot of my batchmates and my seniors who have done similar studies of traditional houses in South India, which are influenced by culture and belief systems. So right now, for the sake of this paper, we are just going to concentrate on the physical adaptation of the house forms to climate and building materials, and how the construction techniques have the green lessons that can learn from usage of materials, construction techniques, and blah blah blah. Yeah, those are the same image of the traditional houses. If you look at the bottom image, it's been the front has been chamfered, but actually the typical Khasi house is, as Mr. Origin had said, is egg-shaped in the egg-shaped in plan. So actually, what you're seeing in Can you see my mouse, by the way? Yeah. Can you see my mouse, anyone?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. So actually this, the portion in the front is actually round, it's actually round, and then which really shows the shape of the egg. And there's a reason, maybe in some other time, if Tata wants me, I can talk more on the meaning in Khasi house forms of why the shape of the egg and stuff like that. But let's concentrate on the physical aspects of it. This house is still there. It's in Sora. And now you can see in this house that it's more, you can see the round shape in front. But this house is quite strange because someone in down the ages, someone had inserted the portico, which is a very alien element. It's an element from the bungalow type house, but I guess someone wanted to have a hybrid, so they've inserted the portico, and it looks to me they had a tough time inserting it because you could see where the portico meets the round edge, so there's a little bit of a design flaw in that. And this house is in Sora, and what we are thinking, with friends of mine, we're thinking of turning into a museum, of renovating it, and it's more than 100 years old. In fact, it had survived the earthquake, so we're thinking of turning it into a museum, to a live museum. These are pictures taken from my thesis. At that time, our theses were black and white. That was way back in '89. And so the first row is a typical traditional house. Then you have variations of it. The second is another traditional house, which is squared in the front. The third is that picture which I showed you earlier, where someone had inserted the portico. And excuse me. Yeah. So this is a typical traditional house, as Mr. Arijit had said, egg shape in plan. Let's talk first about the spatial setting. The egg shape house sits in a U-shaped compound, a U-shaped enclosure, which is enclosed by a stone wall, which is just like 3 or 4 feet in height. But strangely, the house is open towards the village road. I mean, there's no boundary wall towards the village road. So please remember the word I'm using: a U-shaped enclosure, and right at the center sits the house, the traditional house. And in plan, as you can see, very egg-shaped. In fact, so the egg shape is so detailed that even the back of the egg has been cut. If you ever cut a hard-boiled egg, this is exactly how it looks. The top part, which is called which has the air gap, that's how it looks. So very egg shape, pure egg shape, in fact. And you have we'll talk about the structure later. We'll just run through the types, the variations of the house. Egg shape. Then you have, if you can see the black columns, the black dots, those are the columns, which are, so you have the columns, and then you have the egg shape, the egg shape of the form, which is made out of a 2 feet thick limestone wall. And within the plan, there are 2 levels. You enter first into a ground level, actually, which is an earth, and then you climb up a few steps. 3 feet above is the habitable area, and those drawings those are planks, which I've drawn, and they're actually that size. I mean, I've seen planks which are 2.5 feet width and size also. So those are plank flooring, which is elevated from the ground. We'll talk about that later. Those are the sections and the elevations. They'll come. Don't worry, they'll come in the other slides too. This is another variation of the Khasi house. It is still, they still have the round front, but they have added the portico, and they've more or less flattened the back. And this is most probably to take care of the tin sheets. And instead of a thatched roof, they have the roofing is of metal. So, but the interiors are still the same. Those black dots are still the columns. Then you have the other variation, which is totally square, and the roof is totally different. It's more or less like the roof of the bungalow house, but the interiors are still the same. I mean, you enter through a lower level, and you climb up a couple of steps to reach the habitable area of the house. And yeah, so these are the three variations. The pure, let me call it the pure variation, the egg shape. Then the other variation where the back has been cut a bit and the portico inserted. Then you have the third variation, which is totally square, almost square with the portico. And I guess the reasons for these, I call them the evolution of these traditional houses, is because of materials. You know, like changing from thatch to metal, changing, adding the portico maybe to imitate the bungalow type houses that the missionaries or the British have made for themselves. So I guess in culture these things happen. You know? So this we should delve more on this, which is actually more on the what this entire topic is all about. You know, so we can look at the plan, which is more in detail, as I've mentioned. There are two structural systems here. You have a post and beam structural system, which holds the roof. Then you also have a load-bearing wall, which holds only the eaves of the roof. You know, and so it's quite a. In fact, when I look at this and I look at modern architecture, when you start having an envelope now in most of our new buildings now, you have most of the new buildings now that you have the columns inside, and then you have an envelope of either steel of glass, you know, and then you have to sort of AC the entire thing. So even the Khasis have this. You have the basic the post and beam construction, and you have the walls on either side, an envelope of walls that surround the entire building. So the reason for this is that, being, as I mentioned earlier, being a seismic area, so the post and beam construction is actually the ideal construction technology to take care of the seismic forces. And then, but then you, as I mentioned, you also have the other elements of rain, of wind. So you have the 2-inch thick a stone wall, limestone wall at the sides, which takes care of the elements, you know, of dampness, of wind, of wind, of rain. So then you have the plank flooring, the elevated plank flooring, which is elevated from the ground, obviously, to take care of the dampness. And this sits on a platform, of a wooden platform, which is the habitable part of the house. And strangely, so what the Khasis do is that when you enter through the doorway, a very narrow door, you know, and so you first land up at the ground level, which is the storage area, where people store their implements. In fact, you have your chickens and your dogs at the first part of the entrance. And then as you climb up the steps, then you reach the habitable part of the house. And incidentally, the Khasis used to call this portion, I mean, the edge, the division between which we call it, the Khasi calls it the shinko, the ground level. That edge is called the shakso, which literally means the permissible area for the dog. So you actually move from the profane to the most sacred part of the house, which is the habitable part of the house. And when you look at the plan of the platform, the raised platform is divided. The spatial area is divided by these rows of columns, and also the hearth at the center. So these, in turn, you have the bedrooms at the sides, you know, between the column line and the wall, and you have the living area, which is around the fire. And I still remember when my grandparents telling me that whenever there's an earthquake, you know, the best place, the safest place to stand is underneath the doorway. And I guess they were right, because the doorway, the doorway means underneath the post construction, you know, because the structural system, because that's the most, I think so, the most safest place. Because whenever there's an earthquake, the first thing that's going to go off are these load-bearing walls. They'll just crack open and open towards the side. But at least the roof is still covering the house. So that's the thing that we should, the entire structural principle that of the traditional Khasi house. and you can move on to details. This is another a sketch which I talked about. These are all taken from my thesis. There's another sketch on the left of the plan. This is almost like a roof plan where you can see clearly the column line, you know, the beams that tie it, and then you have the extra rafters, you know, to take care of the overhang. And these extra rafters, they just rest basically on this 2 feet thick 2 feet thick limestone wall. Another thing which I want to talk about when we talk about the elements is that the Khasi house has very few windows. In fact, no windows at all. You have only the doorway, the entrance door, and there's a small window at the side which we call pongshai, which literally means to let in light. And the reason for this, the major reason for this, is because of the fog. I mean, for people who have been to Cherrapunji during the monsoons, we have a lot of fog there, which we call jhum. And this fog is actually very rich in moisture. And the biggest problem that contemporary buildings in Sora right now have is, you know, with all the fenestrations that we have and the big glass panes and the aluminum windows that we have. But when you allow this fog to enter the house, it creates havoc. I mean, there's a friend of mine who's got a resort in Cherrapunji. He says, I spend a lot of money just to take care of maintaining this fog, how to get rid of this guy. I mean, I've seen television sets, I've seen pictures, you know, turn gray. I've seen clothing. So this fog, this wet fog, enters into the house and creates havoc inside. So what the Khasis have done is that just try to get rid of the fog, basically, just not to let it enter the house. So that's one of the reasons why not to have too many windows. So at least the warmth of the heat inside the room doesn't allow the fog to come in. Yeah, so that's a plan of the structural system. Maybe at this moment, I would invite maybe Dr. Jayant or Arijit, maybe if there's any questions that you want on this. Is there anything? Dr. Jayant, as a structural engineer, perhaps?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And in fact, the way you were explaining the different systems which are coupled together to handle seismic forces is quite interesting. I was wondering how this whole, quite a larger roof compared to other housing in other parts of India, but this large roof is actually supported internally over different support system.
Yes.
And the eave is supported on a load bearing. If somebody looks from outside, they would be
Yes.
wondering how this whole house is sitting on,
Yes.
thick masonry wall. But inside
Yes.
you have a good wooden system which is quite ductile.
Yes.
And you see how we think that we have learned a lot about earthquake engineering using computer analysis and whatnot. But when we look at the traditional knowledge, and people have learned through suffering, maybe because
Yes.
they might have suffered, they have understood how another better house can be built before the next earthquake. But because the materials are becoming similar everywhere nowadays, that's why we are reaching out on this traditional architecture, which is also based on very good, very good structural concept. So, yeah, it's quite interesting.
Is this the first time you have learned about this, Dr. Jayanta?
Not really, but one thing that the way you are explaining it, this is not explained to me by anyone else before. Today it is as a huge learning experience attending your lecture. So there
Okay,
is
I'm glad.
so much knowledge in the traditional architecture and construction that we have been ignoring maybe over the years, and we should actually go back and try to find out. Maybe the solution is there to look at. That's what I feel. Thank you very much for bringing it up.
Thanks. Arijit Da, is there anything you want to say? You have to unmute, I think. You have to unmute him.
Dada, Rijida.
Hello.
Yes, he is. Yes, I can hear you now. Yes, yes.
Aiban, whatever you have presented today,
Hello.
Yeah, you have unmute yourself.
You can hear me, no?
No, no,
Whatever is done, you see, some of these things have been you in a Siamika at resort. They have got a house, Khasi house, where this is there.
Okay.
It is built with stone and all, and they say your the central heart, and then the walling and all that. That is all it's been shown there. And another very good example is that your inside that in Smith, the Queen's house. I think it's a Queen's house.
Yeah. Incidentally, we had done the renovation of that place.
Anyway, okay, that has been done is probably totally with the traditional methods.
Yes.
One more thing is that you are not permitted to use any metal in the house construction.
Yeah. It's in the. This. I mean, I have to. Someone has got to prove me wrong. I mean, but what I thought was that metal. I think so. It's got to do with lightning.
Yes.
Because
I think that's
because
coming
you see
to
in the pre-monsoons.
Yeah.
The pre-monsoons in Shillong, pre-monsoons, not the monsoons. Almost a month before the monsoons, there's a lot of lightning that happens.
Yeah.
In fact, I call it the sound and light show.
Yeah.
When you have the sound of the wind and the lightning, and so I think so. Metal. The reason why people don't use metal too much is not to attract lightning.
Yeah, because it's the traditional houses, they are out of thatch.
Yeah. Because they're all of thatch. Yeah. So So can I carry on now? With
one more thing is that in the doors and everything, they all are pivoted. They are not with any hinge, metal hinge.
Yeah, everything is wooden.
Yeah. Okay, carry on, please.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the pictures of the interior spaces. You have if you recall, you have the steps which leads from the shinkop. The shinkop is actually the storage area. The first space as one enters in the section. The first space as one enters, that's the shinkop. It's basically a storage area. It's at ground level, but enclosed. Like you enter the house, it's like a veranda. It's an enclosed veranda. So you enter the house and you have the storage space. Then you climb up a few steps. To where the habitable part of the house is. And if you notice the column, there's one column right at the edge of the steps. Very strange. That's a non-structural column. I mean, it doesn't hold the structure at all. The Khasis call it Vishod Blay, which means a sacred post. Where rituals are done around it. It's a non-structural element at all. As you can see in the drawing, it doesn't hold up the roof or anything at all. So, and that is where the shark. I mentioned earlier the sharkso or the permissible area of the dog. So what the Khasis are trying to say is that, I mean, henceforth, from as soon as you enter the platform, this is the most sacred area of the house, which is the habitable part of the house, and animals are not allowed beyond this point, sort of thing. So that we can talk earlier when as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of my thesis is on the cultural and belief systems of the Khasis, so that's where it comes in. Those are a little bit of detailing for engineers. You have the post and beam construction, and it's really interesting because since nails are not done, so everything is on carpentry, right from half cuts, Yeah, and that's the post and beam structural system. You have the rafters, then you have the extension of the eaves, which rest on the the limestone walls at the sides. That's a small detailing of the limestone pillars, which holds the joists. In fact, the limestone pillars have a little niche, at the top, so that the joist doesn't move. In fact, this construction talking about these limestone pillars and joists, they're still being used now in a lot of the villages in the outskirts of Shillong. You know, for especially the far-flung villages, they still use this method of construction. In fact, I've just done recently for a friend of mine who's got a resort in Barapani. He's got these tents. So the entire tent sits on this wooden platform, and we have used the same technology. You know, these are pictures of that house which I showed you earlier. As you can see now, as you can see on the first photograph, where the gap between the post and beam structural system and the load bearing walls at the sides. So in between is where the beds are placed, you know, and the post and beam takes care of the roofing. This is the shakso. You can see those steps going up to the platform, and you can still see little bits of the limestone pillars that hold up the flooring system. Yeah, this is a picture of where you can see where I mentioned earlier about the long line of columns that divides the structural system, the post and beam structural system, and the load bearing walls. So in that gap there. So that ends the part which I mentioned earlier about the pure traditional house. And now we're going to talk more about the second part, which is the house after the earthquake. And just to give you a background, this is a Google map of the first place where the missionaries have parked themselves. This is you can see Nong Saulia Church. This is on the way. This is within Cherrapunji itself. You have Nong Saulia Church, one of the earliest, the first Presbyterian church in the Northeast, in fact. Then you have the mission house, the missionary quarters, the mission school, which just got burned recently. And this is my thesis site, actually, where I've written the converted Khasis. This is a beautiful lane where you have houses on either side. And this is the topic of my thesis. And I've chosen some of the houses there for this paper. This is one of the houses where the missionaries have stayed. At the background, you can see the that's the oldest church in the Northeast, the Nong Saulia Presbyterian Church. You can see the missionary house with the fancy bay windows, the portico, the veranda in front. These are the three bungalow type houses which I've taken as my case study. And you've noticed the portico in front. These two houses are still there, but the last row, this unfortunately a few years back has been dismantled, and I think so the State Bank of Sora has built a building there. You know, here we are talking about symbols of wealth. We have the bank that has taken over the heritage wealth that we have. These are the two houses which are still standing. These are the bungalow type houses that I'll be talking about. You know, you have the portico with the veranda in front. The one on the right is a beautiful house, very beautiful house, well maintained. It's still standing. In fact, I think so the owners have turned it into a bed and breakfast house. This is the typical layout of a bungalow house. Very much, you know, sits within a plot, and you now have a distinct boundary wall. And the only difference with the site plan of the traditional house is that you have a wall in front now, where earlier in the traditional house, the pure traditional house, the entire house, the front of the house is open to the village road. But right now you have a wall here, and then you have a distinct gate with a pathway through the garden that leads up to the portico and onto the veranda and into the interiors of the house. That's another variation, which is the ones, I think unfortunately this house has been dismantled, but thank God I managed to document the building at least. This one is a typical house of a normal family in Sora, you know, where you have the portico, and you have the veranda that runs to the front of the house. Then you have the central space, which we call Kamra Padeng, or the central room, and you have bedrooms at the side. Now, when I mentioned the word bedrooms at the side, I must please remember what I mentioned earlier in the pure traditional house, where you have the bedrooms also at the sides, you know, of the main structure. So there is an echo of the old traditional house with the post-earthquake house. And then you have the kitchen at the back, number 4. This is the elaborate house. I forgot to mention that inside the bungalow house, can you see the small dots? Those are the columns. Okay, so the post and beam system is still prevalent here. Okay, and we have the post and beam system that holds up the house. We'll talk about that in section. And then you have the external walls that takes care of the other elements. But the only difference here is that the gap between the columns and the wall has become just 4 inches. In fact, the columns are almost beside the wall. Now, even in the earlier house, you still have if you notice, you still have the columns, exposed inside the house. And the third house, this beautiful house, if you notice, there are no columns. And the reason for this is because the owner of this house happened to be a contractor. You see, in the early part, in the mid 19th century, in the 1840s or 1850s, there was this talk of bringing the railway from Sylhet to Cherrapunji. I mean, as an East India company, they're not interested in bringing passengers. For them, it's basically exploitation. It's basically how to exploit limestone, as fast as possible. To take the limestone directly from Cherrapunji from the hills right up to Sylhet. So there were plans. In fact, the remnants of the engine of the train is still there. The David Scott Trail coming from Sobar, from the plains of Bangladesh, and the path is still there. So they're planning actually not to bring the railway per se, but it's more or less like a goods. It's like one of those they have in the mines, a carriage. So it failed apparently because of the steep slope. So this gentleman who owns this house happened to be a contractor. So he bought the steel, he bought the railway tracks, and he used the railway tracks as columns. And the columns are embedded inside the double brick wall. This envelope here. So that's why you don't see the columns anymore. They're inside. I've lost pictures of those columns because you can only see the columns when they touch the roof, when they touch the ceiling. So this is a more elaborate house, which I mentioned earlier has been turned into a homestay. A slide of the 3 variants of the house. The spatial setting, incidentally, the top photograph is not here, but it's a typical setting of a house in Wales, which I've taken from the internet, and I've tried to find out. It's like one of the earliest 19th century houses in Wales. And if you notice the portico, in front, notice the front wall with the gate and the pathway leading to the portico, and the one at the bottom. This is a house in Cherrapunji, in Sora. I mean, just look at the 2 photographs. I mean, so you have the road and the gate, the pathway through the garden, the small portico. Of course, it's not double-storied but single-storied. So we're talking about influences from the missionaries. As you can see, the pathway leading through the garden to the portico, the veranda, the main bulk of the house, which is held again by the post and beam structural system, and of course the kitchen and the toilet at the back. Yeah, this is a more detailed plan since we're going to talk about physical systems. Dr. Jayant, these are the columns. These are the columns, the wooden columns which are inside the house, the bungalow house, and then you have the external walls which takes care of the elements. You can see in the section, the difference between the post and beam structural system and the load-bearing walls, which just takes care of the wind and the rain. But the only difference between this section and the traditional house is that the gap between the post and beam structural system and the wall and the retaining wall, the gap is more in the old traditional house, like 4 feet. But right now it's almost bang close to the walls. I'll show you photographs of this. These are the slight detailing that I talked about. See the columns which are very close. The structural system, the post and beam structural system, very close to the retaining walls. You still have the detailing still the same regarding flooring. Those are pictures of the houses. the bungalow type houses. Now this picture, I like this picture a lot because within this compound, this is in Cherrapunji, in the middle of Sora town. In the middle of Sora town, there is this typology where you have the post-earthquake house, and then you have the traditional house, bang in the same compound, you know. And this entire compound belongs to this family that used to make liquor. They used to brew liquor for the East India Company. In fact, they still got a certificate from the East India Company saying that we hereby, you know, whatever, you know, the words they use that allows you to brew the liquor for their soldiers, for the East India Company. Because if you remember, the East India Company had used Sora as a sanctuarium for the soldiers to stay. So they used to brew liquor here in this. And we are trying to turn this entire compound into a museum, you know, because it's very interesting. In the same museum, you have the post and beam, and you have the post-earthquake house, and we still have the traditional house. So what I thought was that I was telling this friend of mine that I'll knock off this portico so that you get the rear. And these are the pictures of that house, of that post and beam house. And as you can see clearly here, you can see that the post and beam structural system, you know, very close to the wall. And the wall takes care of only the elements. Okay? You can see here very clearly. And this photograph at the bottom of this lady, this is a Manipuri lady dancing. This I'd taken is just recently from the net. I was watching this program on World Music Day that happened last Sunday. And I was thinking about my presentation, and I noticed this background of the stage where this lady was dancing. And if you notice, Dr. Jayant, you notice the columns. You know, these are the post and beam columns, the structural system, and then you have the Ekra wall at the behind. You know, but it's just the difference between this photograph and that is that instead of the Ekra wall in Manipur, because most probably it's very warm, it's just the difference is the Ekra wall takes care of a different climatic elements, and here we are in Sora having to take care of different climatic elements. But the structural system is almost the same, you know. So that's a little thing about the post and I mean the earthquake, the post earthquake houses. Dr. Jayant, anything you want to say?
Yes, Aiban, it's so interesting to see how the cladding or the elements were, you know, integrated to the structural system, and they knew that timber is better for seismic. So timber is definitely better, and if you look at the interest in timber even today in Canada and in US, people are trying to build multi-story timber houses now. The timber has inherent property of being very ductile, can take a lot of deformation, and you know the performance of Assam type house during both the earthquakes have been tremendously wonderful. So I was not knowing this much about this, you know, because you have this masonry element and this wooden element, and you have this stilled wooden platform, and I think because of the climate to keep everything warm, you know, the whole system is built differently than the system in Manipur or in Assam. So
Yeah.
so you see the concern about structural safety inbuilt into this whole architecture. This is very wonderful to see. This is very wonderful to see, definitely. Yeah.
So let me, I mean, time is running out. So basically what I'm going to show now, the next few slides are basically what we as a firm, our architectural firm, has been trying to use, trying to gain lessons from the green lessons that we learned from what we have been doing some research, and what we have tried to do it in contemporary work, which we are doing right now at present. So this is the, I call it, these are Areca cottages. These are two cottages done by, they are basically tourist cottages, which we have built in Modern Nong. I mean, you won't see them from the road because they're right inside the forest. And we have tried to attempt here using the same technology, the same construction techniques that we are, of traditional houses. So we have the post and beam again. The main structure I've used RCC columns just to take care of the flooring, and then you have the wooden frame at the top. basic SM type wooden frame. That's for the bedrooms. Then the roofing system is typical SM type. You know, the entire roofing system sitting on this grid, the framework grid. But what we have tried to use here as a false ceiling is we have tried to use palm. That's the palm leaf. Excuse me. That's the palm, the trunk of the palm tree. We've used that as a false ceiling. And for the flooring, we have used the normal joists and painted it with mobile oil to take care of the termites. And over the palm leaf, over the joist, we have laid a 19 mm waterproof block board. As you can see here on the right, waterproof block board we have painted again. And on the left here, you can see the wooden frame with a cement panel board on the inside. And for the outside, we have tried to use different types of palm. In fact, here in this photograph, we have tried to find out whether it looks nice in horizontal format or vertical format. And the gap in between, we have filled it with thermocol, the cheapest insulation available. And over the 19 mm block board, we have used areca, the bark of the areca tree or the guai tree. You know, we have sliced the bark and just nailed it. Not when I was telling my contractor, I said, just nail the areca bark on the floor. He said, sir, I can't nail it because it is so hard that I had to use a screw. You know, that's the areca flooring. And over the roofing system, we have covered it with a sheet of aluminum sheet, and then we've laid the bamboo framework for the thatch. You know? So this is what we have tried to do in this project is to try as much as possible to use local materials, local construction techniques, which the laborers from the villages know. In fact, the only time that we brought in guys from Shillong is when we did the plumbing and the tile work, but all the stone work, the wood work, everything is done by the locals. I mean, this is trying to use as much of local technology and local craftsmen as much as possible. You know? I always believe that sustainability of a building starts from construction. It starts from construction. I believe that whenever there's a project in the rural areas, that the money that you get for the project, right from day one, which means construction, should be distributed within the village itself. I mean, forget about operations, about how you get the money when you operate it, but right from construction, the money should float around in the village itself. And the only way for it to be within the village is to start using local materials and local craftsmen. You know, so that's how it looks at the end. You know, the stone wall, the Cherrapunji stone. That's how it looks at the end. So we polished the bark. Now the interiors we did the interiors a little more slick because we have the cement board, which is white, you know, and that's how it looks. You know, this is after the polishing, so it looks very nice. And in fact, one of the clients, the guests, was saying that it's almost like an acupuncture flooring, you know, because it's not even. The next is other traditional built forms of the Khasis. I'll just run through this fast as possible. The Khasis are very well known for their stone work. They are very good craftsmen. This is a park on the way to Cherrapunji. And what I like about this park is the use of local materials, where in other tourism parks, a lot of people have started using cement. You know, they've somehow this using cement and trying to imitate what the Shillongites are doing is all over the place. You know, but I like this park. It's called the Garden of Caves at this village called Lat Mausiang. You should go there when things are good. You should visit this park. It's beautiful. It's well done. The stone craftsmanship is of the highest quality. There's a footpath. When I went through this footpath, I actually thought that is one of those ancient pathways in the Khasi Hills. Then the guide told me that no, sir, it's just been done 5 years back. And just see how it gels. You know, with the moss have grown into it. You know, and it's just part of the landscape again. And on the right, there's the stone bench, which is actually carved from a big boulder. I mean, there was a big boulder around it. So what this gentleman has done is he has carved this bench, you know, cut off the negative sides and formed a bench. Then this the treatment of the retaining walls. For architects out there who are listening, this reminds me of Mario Bota's work, the famous Swiss architect. He uses a lot of he uses these patterns when he makes these brick walls. That's a beautiful bridge out of stone. And by the way, these are not old. These are 5 years back. This is done by this gentleman in this village. That's a stone bridge which is carved. I mean, it's a massive piece of rock, and they have carved the risers and the treads, and then they have joined these two angles together, so it's self-loading. You know, Jayanta, look at this photograph carefully. It's so beautiful, the bridge. You know, the two bridges. I don't know what you call this in civil engineering, but two sections of the bridge held together at the center. You know, beautiful. I like these steps because these steps are carved out of big stone, of a massive stone. There's another of the stonework. This is inside the cave. It's so beautifully done. So in the Khasi Hills, we also have these structures. These are called kors, E-O-R-S. These are resting places, which the Khasis used to make, you know, either on top of the hill or midway in the hill, you know. And these are monuments for monuments for a dead person, for a relative who died. And what I like about these, the monuments, the memorial stones, if I may use them, what I like about the memorial stones among the Khasis is that they are functional. You know, they're unlike the memorial stones that the British make. You know, for example, I mean, let's go through the slides. So this one is in Sora. We had gone trekking. There's another place towards Usla area, and this is very interesting because you have the British influenced memorial stone among them. These are beautiful kors where they're very articulated well. They have these little chhatris around them, and right at the background you can see Bangladesh again. Yeah. So what I was telling you is that this is Motpran. This is in the middle of Barazar. This is a British-made. Oh, sorry. This is a British-made monument. You know. So it's a and at the bottom you have another monument belonging in remembrance of David Scott. This British gentleman called David Scott was the political agent in the hills. So when he died in Sora, someone had made a monument for him. And this is how the British monument looks like. Static. I call them a selfie monuments. I mean, you can't do much. I mean, except take a selfie there. And then I like this picture because in this photograph, you have the core, the Khasi Traditional Memorial, and you have the British monument at the center. In fact, I was telling my friend, I said, whoever made this monument must be having a serious bout of identity crisis. You know, I mean, he doesn't know whether to have a Khasi memorial or to have a British-looking memorial. So he made both of them, you know, together. And the British memorial is right bang in the middle of the core, you know, the Khasi traditional. Then we also have the Maubanas, which are again, they are actually memorial stones, which are made for an event or for someone who died. And again, the horizontal stone, which we call the Maukanthe, is actually a place to sit. And there I am. You can see me sitting with a friend of mine my colleague from Ahmedabad school, who had come, and we were just talking about these memorial stones. I said, Jasprit, let's sit on them and tell your son to take a photograph of us, you know, just to show the functionality of the entire thing. Okay, this is disaster. This slide is a disaster. This is what we have done. On the left-hand side are ancient pathways, okay, which were made of that similar stone, that, you know, the pathway stone, and someone thought that plastering it looks better, and this is how it looks. You know? Someone thought that it's better to plaster the core. You know, I mean, this is what we now in this century thinks. I mean, for us, everything smooth, everything lacme and fair and lovely looks nice. You know, so I call it the fair and lovely core and the original core. I mean, look at this. You know, the beautiful. It must have been done with beautiful stone, carved stone, and someone had decided to. Plaster it. And then there's another resort in Cherrapunji, which I mentioned, belonging to a friend of mine, where look at the construction technique. I mean, why don't we learn from our ancestors? Here we are, a post and beam system, but then instead of having the walls a little bit further to take care of the moisture, the walls are flush with the columns. This house, okay, the rooms in this resort, every year has to be painted. The insides are damp, you know. So these are so-called modern interventions without having any respect, without being sensitive to what our ancestors have done. The next slide, couple of slides, is basically it's a project that we had done in Shillong. We won a design competition where I have did together with friends of mine from Bangalore, where we have to bring in this entire cultural built heritage of Meghalaya, in one single space at Barik Point. So I just run through it. So this is Barik Point. What we have done is basically we have inserted all the buildings inside. Okay, you have covered the buildings from the top. You don't see any. The only buildings that you see is this very old heritage Assam type house, which belongs to the chief engineer of Assam. And it is still being used by the chief engineer of PWD, and we have decided to retain that as a built heritage, and we have built the structures around it, but we have kept the roof. We have covered the roof with earth, so it becomes a meadowland. And surrounding the site, okay, we are going to plant we have proposed to plant a lot of indigenous trees, just to have an echo of the sacred groves which is one of the very important elements of our culture. And on the meadows, we have decided to have the core. You can see them, the cores and the monoliths. So this is a small attempt of ours in trying to create a microcosm of our built heritage in the middle of Shillong. That's how it looks in one of the things. This is Barik with the civil hospital on the left. Then then you have State Central Library. And what we have done in this project is that we have combined State Central Library and we have joined State Central Library at the new site by having an overpass. So thank you. That ends my pretty long, but I hope no one has left the building. So guys, how many guys have left?
No. Everyone is there. People are shifting from Zoom to Facebook. A lot of youngsters, they like to be on the Facebook. So I was monitoring, side by side what's happening in the Facebook Live, and sometimes I can see if 2 persons have left here and another 4 persons are joining there. So yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I forgot to respond when you stopped talking. I was just, things were going in my mind, I forgot to unmute myself and respond to you either.
It's okay, it's okay.
It's been really, really wonderful. It's been really wonderful.
Thank you, Doctor.
And I wish that you go on for another 1 hour and I get to know more and more about this wonderful cultural heritage, architectural heritage of our beautiful state, Meghalaya. Yes, thank you so much for bringing up so many things in such a short time. You spoke about...
I thought I took almost I don't know, I didn't time myself, but I hope I've done it in 45 minutes. So,
yeah, sometimes we don't look at the
I hate to talk too much, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I thought like maybe we should. I hate this talking to a machine. I like to see emotions. I like to see an audience, smile and yawn, baby. If they don't like.
This going to be the new normal now. We need to connect without seeing people, maybe at times.
Yeah.
And I can see you have picked up online. You were saying that it would be quite difficult for you to give a lecture without having the audience looking at you and looking at each other. But you did wonderfully well. It's like
Thanks,
I thought that you have done it many times before.
No. This is to be honest, this is my second time. The first time is for the, I think so, green, those people from Green Architecture. But I find it very odd because I don't see the audience.
Okay, maybe that helped us today. That
maybe
the second time, and I didn't feel it. I was like, I felt like being seated in front of you and looking at your presentation and you both.
Thanks.
Thank you so much again. Kublai.
Thank you.
So yes, you spoke about the traditional architecture. You took us back many years back into the history and how it was, and we can see that how new materials are coming. And towards the end of your lecture, you have shown some unscientific so-called modern intervention. to our strong traditional knowledge. And we have this unbalanced and unscientific inclination towards this reinforced concrete, cement concrete, and we have a feeling that anything which is pakka is better for us. That
Exactly. That's the word. I mean, I remember when we were young,
Yeah.
when there was this transition from SM type to RCC, the Janata, the crowd,
Yeah.
they call it building or a pakka
Building.
building.
Pakka
It's a
building.
for me, Dr. Jayant, as an architect, it's quite sad about this. I mean, like this, there are these two beautiful materials, cement and plastic,
Yes.
okay, which have been abused
Abused.
in the sense because of their plasticity, because of their flexibility, because of the forms that they can change. They've been sort of abused. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they've not really been used to.
Yes.
I mean, to the limit that they have. I've seen resorts where they have used they have these cement railings, okay,
Yes.
and someone had used plaster of Paris,
Yes.
to make it look like wood. I mean, it's so idiotic.
Yeah.
Plaster of Paris is like another material where just because it's plastic, it's got that flexibility. People, I mean, whom are you trying to fool? By saying that it should look like wood. But I mean, that's how I think so. I think so. What we're talking here is that the purity of the material is not being respected anymore.
Yes. And there is lack of awareness, and there is lack of patronage, I would say, from the government. The construction department has to also come forward and should be showing respect to the traditional. Otherwise, in the first lecture also, we are talking about all the cities and all the towns are looking similar. There is no traditional. You go to any place, they look the same. Because
Dr. Jayant, you see, I don't want to romanticize
Yes.
about traditional buildings. I mean, there are certain things about traditional buildings that you can't make anymore. I mean, wood
Yes.
is very expensive. Wood is difficult to maintain. I mean, the wood that the people there have used was mature wood, being cut at the right time, at the right season. I don't want to romanticize. What I want to say here is that we should pick up certain construction techniques or certain elements, traditional elements that we can still use now. But it's not necessary that we use them out of wood again.
Yes. So yes, there are not many questions. People are spellbound. They're just enjoying what you are presenting. But while I was also following your lecture in Facebook, I found people joining, from Europe. I found Swagata Das. She's doing PhD at the University of Leuven, Belgium, and she actually requested you to say more about the last few slides where you have shown the project. And she is actually doing her PhD in traditional architecture, and she was following your lecture in Facebook Live. So you had participants from Europe attending your lecture today. And Arijitda will come and do a bit of interactions. But before I forget, Swagata Das has requested you to type the name of the projects at the end of the presentation. So we can get back to her. These projects are, I think one project was in Sora, the resort, wonderful resort that you have done. And one is
I have not done that resort. It was the resort in Sora was not done. It was a government construction. What I was trying to say is that they have not used they have not learned the lesson from. Oh yeah, okay. That is a beauty. That's
okay.
That's
okay. So I will write to her here, requesting her email ID or some communication.
Yeah, maybe. I can see her name here, but I can't type the answer.
Okay, sure. So we'll see that we can send some information to her. She has requested, and a lot of people have written. It's a super presentation, and all the right element of vernacular architecture is effectively covered today. People have thanked you. So I would like to now request Arijit Chaudhary to come and do what his take on these presentations, and some interaction between you and him to benefit the participants. So I leave it to now architect Arijit Chaudhary. Arijit da, please.
Yes, Swagata happens to be architect Prasanta Das's daughter.
Okay, okay.
So that is her introduction, but she is all by herself now.
Yeah.
And what Aiban had presented was absolutely mind-blowing. It was an
Yes.
eye-opener to everybody, and
Yes.
also for people to see maybe architecture a little differently for the region. That is what I would say, because he very rightly talked about RCC buildings, how the use of RCC, how we are working on RCC and imitating just what has been given to us and not thinking of how to use it for the way we would like to have it for the region. That is one of the things. Aiban, who is definitely taking a creating and making an awareness into all of us, even the architects and everybody, to handle the materials in a more positive manner. And well, I think it's been a very beautiful presentation by Aiban, and it was actually time is very short for such presentations and for interactions, and a lot more can be done. A lot more wish had more time in his presentation.
Thank you.
Already Jointo has covered up a lot of points that needs to be talked to Aiban. I would thank again Aiban, and we'll continue to interact between ourselves.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see when we can see each other. Maybe we can think our difference, take it in a different manner. Because now that we are not looking at any audience, so I think the audience will play a different role.
Okay.
I think that's all.
Okay. And thanks a lot again to Tata Tiscon, Rishi. Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Mr. Sarath Kumar Jain, for giving me this opportunity. And for all you guys in Guwahati, please stay safe, and may the best be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aiban. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So I would like to then Rishi take over, and before that,
there is one more question. If you
yes,
want.
Yes.
Yes. It's by Priyam Ballabh Goswami. You can see.
Priyam Ballabh Goswami. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's in the chat box. Okay.
In the Q&A section, sir.
Can you just mention it then, Rishi? You can do that.
Yeah. So the question is: do the stone walls in traditional house also help absorb heat during the day and release during cold nights?
Yes, good question. That's the good question, because the 2-inch thick stone walls, they also insulate the building, because you see what happens is that the house, the interior of the house is very warm because of the fireplace, and the fire does two things. One is heat up the house, and the other thing is preserve the timber inside, and especially the bamboo scaffolding that holds up the roof. Because the main structure of the roof is wooden, but you have also another layer of bamboo that holds off the thatch. So the fire warms the house, and the stone wall insulates it. And in fact, the insulation that they use is lime. They use a lot of lime because lime is easily available in the Khasi Hills. So they use the lime mortar as an insulation for the stone walls. I hope I've answered the. Maybe I can answer later in Facebook.
There's another question here, which also asks about the egg-shaped housing plan. So the two examples that you had shown in Sura, in the same compound, one with the post-earthquake design Assam type, and the other one is the egg-shaped house. Now, both of them are still there.
Yes.
Yeah, both of them are equally there. So it proves that the egg-shaped house, because of its shape, that is why maybe it had to withstood the earthquake. because
Yeah,
of
okay. No.
elliptical shape, which has
Yeah,
no
so Arijit, there is a school of thought that says that the reason for the egg shape is because of aerodynamic, to take care of the wind. You know, I differ from that, because when I had gone to Lankawet village and I've seen these houses, all these houses are not really facing west or southwest, facing the wind direction, but they are like haphazard. So my thesis, where we have to talk about in a different, maybe a different lecture, when I talked about earlier about the meaning in Khasi house, that's where that's where I can bring up this topic of the reason of the form. Because the egg plays, okay, just to answer your question briefly, the egg plays a very, very important role in our rituals and ceremonies, a very important role. In fact, when they want to know, like for example, that house that you talked about, the Queen's house, you know, the ritual that they do at the end of the dance, okay, they used to cut the egg to see. I mean, the broken egg shows will give the signs whether it's going to be a good harvest or a bad harvest. You know, so the egg plays a very important role here. So that's the reason for my hypothesis that the reason for the egg shape is because of that. And through the detailing of even cutting when you cut a hard-boiled egg, you know, the top part, as I said, the air gap, you know, it's flat. So they've gone to that. So my hypothesis is that the reason for the egg shape is because of a belief system. So that's why maybe in another presentation I would talk more on the meaning in Khasi house form, where I'll be where issues of the shape of the egg, the reason for the movement from the outside to the inside, the profane and the sacred part of the house. You know? So my thesis was actually that, and this presentation is just actually 1/3 of my thesis, because a lot of my thesis is on the cultural and belief system of the Khasis and how it influences the form of the house.
And Jesse added whether it could be related to energy. The shape is also about energy.
To what? Pardon me?
Soul energy is supposed to be egg-shaped. Is it because of that? Maybe some belief system or fate?
You know, as I mentioned, it's more to do with the egg playing a very important role in our rituals.
Okay.
You know, and and you know something, when I was doing my thesis, I read a lot. A lot of tribal societies also look at the egg, you know, as a microcosm of the universe. You know, like the egg is actually the start of life, and the hearth at the center, the fireplace, the hearth at the center, you know, where people gather, is for the Khasis, is the center of the universe. I mean, it's a microcosm of the universe. The house is actually a microcosm of the universe with the hearth at the center. You know, and the egg is about birth. It's about life. You know, new life. So, well, we can talk about that later, I think.
Like I mentioned about this in the beginning, that the egg takes care of the embryo.
Yes.
Embryo. So
and the embryo is actually the hearth of the house, the fireplace, where our songs, our stories, our ancestors exchange, where they gossip, where songs are being passed on from one generation to another, where folk tales are talked about, songs are sung. This happened in that embryo. You're right, Arijit. I like that word, the embryo, the hearth being the embryo. You know, and as I said, you know, the egg is it represents life. It represents something new. You know?
Okay. I think Rishi can call it a day.
Yes, sir. So, there was just one more question. I don't know if this has been answered. So, say it was regarding. 1 second. So, it was regarding why bamboo cane is not utilized as bending material in construction of livelihood in Northeast region. Any problem regarding that?
Come again? Why bamboo?
Why bamboo cane is not utilized as a bending material in construction of livelihood in Northeast region? Jayanta sir, if
I wish, I think so. The ideal person, as I mentioned, Rishi.
yeah,
Let us try and call Richard Belho.
okay,
Architect Richard Bello from Nagaland.
right,
Okay,
sir.
who I think to me he is the
Full
bamboo architect of the Northeast, if not India.
Okay.
So maybe Richard would be the best person to answer that, because
Okay.
I honestly I'm not too much into I'm not too much. I mean, I don't know much about bamboo as much as Richard. I think so. He would be the best person. Please call him in your next this so-called in this this series or this lecture series.
Okay, sir. Okay, sure. So,
Yeah, okay.
thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such a enriching, I would say, enriching presentation. All the slides were very neat and very detailed, and of course, very informative. And the way you explained each of the slides really showed the passion which you carry for the subject.
Yeah, it
So,
was my thesis. So.
yeah, so thank you. And I would just like to inform you that we were also live on Facebook all this while during the session. And we have been fortunate to have students and faculty who have joined us from institutes such as NEHU, Guwahati College of Architecture, and Royal School of Architecture. Also, I'd like to inform you that uh, Swagata Das is actually doing her PhD in Belgium and joined us from there on Facebook.
Yeah.
So we are actually
So
not only-
please
Yes.
send her my email and she can contact me.
Okay, sir, we'll do that.
Knowledge should be shared.
Sure, sir, sure. So,
Thanks.
I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that.
So once again, before I give the final thank you note, I would just request Mr. Rahul Aditya from Tata Steel to just share a few words and give the final thank you note and end the session.
Yeah, thank you, Rishi. Thank you so much. I just want to thank once again to Architect Aiban Mawkhroh sir, Jayanta Pathak sir, Arijit Chaudhary sir, Rishi, Sarajji, Kamal, and the entire SM Corp team for putting this all together in such a wonderful fashion. And thanks to Shivam for joining this and giving his inputs on this. I think as Jayant Pathak sir said and Rishi mentioned, this is the presentation was excellent and it almost took us to some kind of a down the memory lane for people who have were not much so much initiated into this entire scheme of things. So the entire architecture and so since Tata Steel and Tata Tiscon in particular, we have always been involved with high quality architecture, be it traditional, be it modern architecture. So this is something which is really eye opening for us. And from Tata Steel, I think we continue to collaborate and see how well we can all build up this ecosystem where we can share each other's best practices and create a more sustainable world going forward. And in fact, Tata's sustainability and going green is one of the key cornerstones of our brand. So and Rishi, I think you would agree that this initiative has the potential of going much more higher. I think in just a span of 2 sessions, people have joined from across the globe, and the session is going from one level to the other. I think that this is really has got the potential of growing much more bigger. So I think we'll all take the cue from this and let us all put our heart and heads together to see how well we can again come up with the next series of Sampark. And thanks to all the participants who have joined, and thanks to the entire panelist team. That's it from my side.
Dr. Pathak, am I allowed to come out with some concluding remarks?
Please, sir.
I am really impressed with Mr. Aiban, and hats off to him for his super passion for this architecture. Thank you, Mr. Aiban. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So thank you once again from.
Thanks, Mr. Sarad.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, sir, we'll just conclude.
Thank you.
So, thank you to all the participants, all architect engineers who took out time and stayed with us throughout the session, and also those who put up questions. And we hope that your questions were duly answered. So please wait for the next session of Sampark. We'll be coming soon. Thank you. Stay safe and a very good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Arijitda. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Pathakda. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good night. Stay safe.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good night.
Aiban. Thank you.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye. Bye, sir. Thank you.
Bye, Ivan. Good night, Ivan.
Good night.
Yeah, good night, good night, good night.
Good night, Arijit sir.
Yes, good
Priyanka
night.
sir.
Okay, right.
Ivan sir, good night.
Good night. Thank you.